So, how exactly do you govern a nation of over 1 billion people? It's a massive question. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the incredible, complex machinery of India's parliament and try to figure out how the world's largest democracy actually works.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Over 1 billion people with this incredible diversity of cultures, languages, and beliefs, all governed by a single system. So how on earth does it all hang together? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
To really understand how a machine this complex functions, you can't just start with the gears. You have to look at its blueprint. We need to start with the why. Why did India's founders choose the specific model of government in the first place?
Well, the logic behind it really boils down to 3 key things. First was simple familiarity. India had decades of experience with the British parliamentary system, so it wasn't a totally new concept. Second, and this is absolutely crucial for a country as diverse as India, was representation. They needed a system that could give a voice to everyone. And third was accountability, a built-in safety measure to make sure the government always answers directly to Parliament, preventing any one person from getting too powerful.
Okay, so with that blueprint in mind, let's take a look at the actual structure that was built. Right at the very heart of India's parliament, you have 2 distinct houses. Think of them as 2 chambers of the same engine, but each one has a very different job to do.
So these 2 houses, they represent 2 totally different ideas. On one side, you've got the Lok Sabha, the House of the People. This is the direct voice of the public, fast, responsive, with members elected every 5 years. But on the other side, you have the Rajya Sabha, the Council of States. It's designed to be a slower, more deliberate body. It represents the states themselves, and its members serve longer, 6-year terms. So one can be completely dissolved for a fresh election, while the other is a permanent, continuous body.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, the Lok Sabha can have up to 550 members. That's 550 people directly chosen by the citizens, making it the real engine room of India's democracy.
And then by contrast, the Rajya Sabha is smaller, with a maximum of 250 members. And that smaller size really reflects its different purpose. It's not about direct popular will, it's about being a council that represents the states of the Union, giving every law a thoughtful second look.
All right, so we've got the structure down. Now let's fire this thing up. How does this simple idea travel through this whole system to become a law that actually governs over 1 billion people?
It all starts with something called a bill. And really, a bill is just a fancy name for the draft of a proposed law. But its journey from just a piece of paper to the law of the land, well, that's a long and pretty tough road.
I mean, think of it like an obstacle course. It starts with a first reading, which is basically just an introduction. The real test is the second reading, where the bill is debated, pulled apart, and scrutinized. If it somehow survives that, a third reading leads to a final vote. But wait, winning in one house is only half the battle. The bill is then sent over to the other house to run that entire gauntlet all over again. Only if it passes both of those hurdles does it finally land on the president's desk for the final signature.
Whew, that's a lot of hurdles. So it kind of begs the question, right? What happens if a bill passes one house but gets stuck or even rejected in the other? Is the whole thing just dead in the water? Well, not necessarily.
The Constitution has this clever little tiebreaker mechanism built in, called a joint sitting. The president can actually call both houses to meet together and vote as one single body. And whatever gets a simple majority in that session passes. It's a way to break gridlock, but because the Lok Sabha is so much larger, it almost always gives the advantage to the government of the day.
Now, there is one major exception to this whole process, and it's all about money. Any bills that deal with taxes or government spending, what are called money bills, can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha. The Rajya Sabha gets to look at it and offer suggestions, but they have to send it back within 14 days, and at the end of the day, the Lok Sabha has the final, absolute word. This gives the directly elected House the ultimate power over the nation's wallet.
So now that we've seen how the legislative machine works, let's look at the key operators. And this is a common point of confusion for a lot of people, the difference between the president and the prime minister. Who is actually holding the power?
You know, this quote from India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru just perfectly captures the role of the president. The position is the head of state, a role with immense prestige and symbolic importance, but it was never designed to hold the direct, day-to-day executive power.
And this distinction wasn't just left as an unwritten rule. It was formally cemented right into the Constitution back in 1976. The 42nd Amendment made it crystal clear
The president shall act on the advice of the prime minister and their cabinet, and that word shall is what makes it legally binding.
So if you look at it on paper, the president's powers seem absolutely immense, summoning parliament, appointing judges, commanding the entire armed forces. But here's the crucial detail you have to remember. Nearly all of these powers are exercised only on the advice of the government. So you could say the president may hold the pen, but it's the prime minister's cabinet that tells them where to sign.
So, if the president acts on advice, who's the one giving that advice? The prime minister. As the head of government, this is where the real day-to-day executive power is. The PM leads the majority in the Lok Sabha and basically directs the entire machinery of the government.
Okay, so you have houses, bills, presidents, prime ministers, all these different moving parts. They're all designed to serve one central purpose. And it all comes down to a single, really important idea: balance.
You can really see how all the pieces create this web of checks and balances, right? The government has to answer to the Lok Sabha. The two houses check each other, the president gives the final sign-off, and then, kind of overseeing it all, you have the judiciary, which interprets the laws. It's a system designed specifically to distribute power, so that no single part can become too dominant. And this really gets to the fundamental design of a parliamentary system. It's not a strict separation of powers, like three totally separate buildings. It's much more like one big building with interconnected rooms. The executive branch, the government, is literally born from the legislative branch. They're intertwined, designed to work together, while also keeping each other in check. It is, without a doubt, a complex design. But you could argue it was built for an equally complex nation. The whole system is meant to ensure representation, accountability, and stability. But the question that always hangs in the air is, in the messy, day-to-day reality of politics, does this intricate machine always work the way it was intended?